So, a week from today, if we assume Washington did make a pick in the first round at number 29 overall, and if we take a consensus of the mock draft availables at 29, players that if you have followed enough of the pre-draft conversation, a lot of these players have either been mocked to Washington or they're available for Washington at number 29. I have a list of players, three of them, in fact, that after doing a little bit of homework and a little bit of watching and reading, but watching a lot over the last 2 nights really, there are three players that I think I would be surprised if they took at number 29. And I'll start with, I'd be surprised if Washington takes James Pierce Jr., edge rusher, Tennessee. Starting with, he's got red flags all over him, especially from a work ethic standpoint. There are a lot of people that want to be assured, and maybe Washington has been assured, but there is too much smoke around James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher from Tennessee, with respect to work ethic. And by the way, a couple of incidents related to traffic charges. Nothing significant. Speeding, driving on a suspended license, failure to provide insurance information, all young people stuff. But really, the issue has been missed off-season workouts at Tennessee, occasionally showed up late, and there's just a question as to whether or not James Pierce Jr. loves football. So number one is, we know this organization is looking for a continuation of building upon the culture that they started to create last year. 7 of their 9 draft choices last year were team captains, were guys that were squeaky clean to a certain degree. I don't see them taking a flyer on James Pierce Jr. at the end of the first round with a first-round pick. By the way, he could be gone before 29, or he could be one of those guys that drops into the second round because of these concerns. He is a legitimate athlete and one of those kind of longer athletes. And he has the ability at 6'5", 245, ran 4.47. This is a guy that's tall, athletic, has the long arms, the angular kind of a build that you see in some of those edge rushers in today's game. Got, real twitch, ability to bend, ability with multiple moves to rush the passer. I think that he's fine in the run game. I don't know that he's great as an edge setter, but I'll tell you what, to be great as an edge setter in the run game, you got to be willing to study. You got to be willing to work. James Pierce Jr., no doubt, is a first-round, early second-round talent as an edge rusher. I just have crossed him off the list because everything you read about Pierce Jr., everything, is that NFL GMs need to be assured that this guy's work ethic will be NFL caliber, will be professional at the next level. I just don't see Washington messing around with that at all. By the way, I'm not including this player on the list of 3 players that I'd be surprised if they took in the first round, because I don't think there's any chance that he makes it to them because his talent is obscene, and that's Mike Green, the pass rusher from Marshall. There's some, issues with him as well. Sexual assault allegations from when he was at UVA. But I don't see him getting there, so I didn't include him on this short list of players that I'd be surprised if Washington took, because I'm including I'm looking at a list of the players that from a consensus standpoint in most mocks might be there and have, by the way, in some cases been mocked to Washington. James Pierce Jr., I don't see Washington taking at number 29. Number 2 on my list of I'd be surprised if they took him. This is going to be a surprise to some of you, and it was a surprise to me after last night. I spent a lot of time looking at the running backs. I'd be surprised if they took Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina at number 29. It's possible he's gone too, but he's not in Ashton Genty's class. I've decided that Hampton's really nice, but he's more in the mix with all of the other backs that I think start to come off the board on night 2 based on their ability. I like Hampton. I just don't see him as a first-round pick at running back. I've said this before, but if you're going to take a running back in the first round, you have to be sure that you're getting somebody of the caliber of the elite backs in the league, Saquon Barkley, Christian McCaffrey, Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, etc. I like Hampton. I think there's a chance he'll be a solid starting pro running back, but I don't see him as an elite running back at the next level, worthy of taking because of the position in the first round. If Washington were going to take a first-round running back that isn't Ashton Genty, I'll give you one or two that I'd feel better about than Omarion Hampton. But to be honest with you, I don't feel great about any of them after Genty. Genty is all-world talent and has a chance to be an elite back in the NFL. You know, running backs end up becoming elite taken after the first round. But just in looking at Hampton right now, to me, he's not a first-round running back, that position. At other positions, you would consider taking him at number 29 overall, but I'm not taking a running back that I don't see as elite. Part of what makes me concerned about Hampton, I love his size. I love his power. I love his motor. I don't think he's got the greatest of vision. I don't think he really has breakaway kind of football speed. I know he ran, I think, 4.45 at the combine. I don't think he pass blocks particularly well. I spent a little bit of time of looking at the backs that I liked before really looking at him last night. I think that he doesn't have enough wiggle, runs a little bit upright. I just don't see elite here with Hampton. I see very good, but don't see elite with Hampton. I do with Genty. God, man, Genty is going to be really good. I've mentioned this guy's name many times before because I just kind of fell in love with the player when he was at Oregon State. But to me, I don't see much difference between Hampton and Damian Martinez from Miami. And Martinez is definitely climbing boards. I've seen him mocked, night 2, second round, as high as second round. It's also possible that he's still around on day 3 because, like Hampton, he isn't necessarily a stellar pass blocker at this point. You know, you see that with a lot of young backs coming out. They're just not there yet. Because really, at the college level, they've been asked to carry the freight, guys like Hampton in particular. I mean, he had some unbelievable football games last year. And if you go back and you look at some of the games that he had great games against, they weren't against stellar defensive teams necessarily. Wake Forest, as an example, was probably his best game. He rushed for 244 yards. He had a game early in the season against Minnesota, very early in the season. Minnesota pretty good defensively in the Big Ten. He averaged 4.3 yards per carry. He rushed for $129. Took him 30 carries to get there. There wasn't a lot of great defense necessarily in the ACC. You know, you saw that like with the Miami-Georgia Tech game, the Miami-Louisville game when Miami was fighting for a playoff spot. There just wasn't great defense across the board. Carolina played in a game this year against JMU. The final score was 70-50. North Carolina hasn't had a good defense in college football for years. They gave up 70 to JMU in that game, by the way. Hampton did rush for 139 yards on 19 carries, 7.3 yards, but they had to start throwing the football a bunch in that game. So I'd be surprised if they took Hampton at number 29. I like the player. I just don't think he is someone worthy of taking with a first-round pick in a draft that is heavy in running back talent. And I don't see a lot of separation between him and some of the other backs after Genty. Like, I see Damian Martinez right there with Hampton. By the way, in stature, in size, in style, I think Henderson's got much more breakaway, big game, big play potential. I like Caleb Johnson a lot from Iowa. So I'd be surprised if they took Omarion Hampton from North Carolina at number 29. And then lastly, and this is a player that I really like a lot too, but I would be surprised if they took Luther Burden III, wide receiver from Missouri, at number 29 overall. He has been one of my favorite players to watch in college football the last couple of years. He is truly, special in creating space and then with the ball in his hands after the catch. I like everything about him, watching him on the field. But one of the things in sort of doing a bunch more research on the players, and I do remember this being a bit of an issue. He's got a bit of a temper. He's gotten for things on the field, lost his cool multiple times. He has an issue occasionally with taking plays off. If the play isn't coming to him, he looks a bit like he's lacking in wanting to participate. Who does that remind you of? And by the way, there are a lot of similarities in style of play. Jahan Dotson, who they begged during last offseason and during training camp to play it out, to hustle. We talked about this last year when they let Dotson go, even before trading Dotson and moving on from him. You heard Dan Quinn saying, we got to see him play every play out. They want dive on the floor hustlers. It's who they want. And I don't think that's Luther Burden for them anyway. I love the player in terms of the talent. I think he is going to be a really good receiver, probably more inside than outside. But I think the concern over a guy like Luther Burden is he going to play it out every play? Is he going to dive on the floor for every loose ball? It's not what Jahan Dotson was. They saw that in him. That's not what they wanted out of their wide receivers. They also want their wide receivers to block. It's not necessarily Luther Burden's favorite thing. He is more of an Olay blocker. Like, hey, let me just kind of shade you in this one direction. I don't see them taking Luther Burden III. 3 players that have all been mocked to Washington or have all been mocked in the general area of Washington at 29. I don't see James Pierce Jr. being selected by Washington. I don't see Omarion Hampton being selected by Washington. And I don't see Luther Burden III being selected by Washington. I think all 3 players are extraordinarily talented. I think Hampton's going to be a good NFL back. I do. But I don't see him being in the same category of high-level, top 5 kind of a back. I see Ashton Genty that way. And I see Hampton closer to some of the backs that you could get on night 2 or even day 3. And when I say that, I think he is going to go long before some of those backs because I do think his talent level is, worst case, day 2. But I don't think Washington's going to take him at 29. I don't. Luther Burden and James Pierce Jr. just have issues that don't fit with the kind of people and players effort-wise that they were looking for last year and that I think they'll be looking for this year. Just my guess. Week from today, we'll know. I mean, there's a chance that they trade back. And by the way, there are other players that I think will be a concern, for them at number one. But those were the three that really stood out from three position groups that are possible for Washington at number 29 overall. Like Egbuka, to me, is somebody they'd probably want. Different overall, I think, overall in the, for the lack of a better description, intangible set than a Luther Burden. But yeah, and at this point, to me, I think the running back that deserves to go in the first round is Ashton Genty. And after that, I don't see a first round back unless somebody really falls in love with Trayvon Henderson and his game breaking and play breaking ability. But I don't see it as a first round pick. Pierce Jr., talent, no doubt, but clearly, I mean, out of the players in the first round, at the edge spot in particular, Mike Green and James Pierce Jr. have the biggest red flags going into this. Green is a better player, a more productive player, and I think will be a better pro than Pierce Jr. And Pierce Jr., you do have to wonder, just where the actual fit is from an all-down standpoint. He's got the body type, though, that teams seem to be looking for in edge rushers in this day and age.